Okay, tonight, guys, what we're going to be talking about is everything thyroid. And what we're going to be discussing tonight is what does your thyroid do? What are symptoms of an unhealthy or dysfunctional thyroid? And what can cause an unhealthy thyroid? And then how you can test to see whether or not you have a thyroid that is optimized or that is dysfunctional. And then also, we're going to talk about some things you can do, some strategies to put in place to make sure that your thyroid is healthy. So, what is the thyroid? Well, it's a small gland that's right about at Adam's apple level. And most people, when they think of the thyroid, the first thing that comes to mind is the metabolism. And of course, that's an integral part of what the thyroid does in terms of functionality. But there's so many more things that are involved with the thyroid now. And I think it's important to really convey to everybody that the body works as a system. So there's no one part, gland, organ, system, muscle that works in isolation. The body's designed to work best as a system. And so many times when someone has a thyroid issue, there's a multitude of things and maybe multiple variables that might be going on that is creating that one thing. So obviously, many of you know that when we take a look at any symptomology that a client is experiencing, our number one thing is we want to get to the root cause. So if you have a thyroid issue, why do you have that thyroid issue? Is there anything that's potentially driving that in terms of stressors? And when you take a look at kind of some of the symptoms that people experience when it comes to the thyroid, I got a list here that I'm just going to kind of go through and see if any of these things kind of jump out at you. And it will tell you that the majority of the population, particularly over the age of 40, and it's probably 80% of the people that experience thyroid issues over the age of 40 are females. And the reason is, and we're going to explain that, but they have many more variables that come into play. Hormonal scars, particularly like episiotomy, hysterectomy scars, cesarean scars that can create electrical disruption affecting the thyroid. But the thyroid, in terms of symptoms, would be unexplained weight gain. And the unexplained weight gain, even if your nutrition is really good, you're exercising, and you're struggling to lose weight, many times there's something else. And generally, the thyroid is playing a role in that. Then you can also have unexplained weight loss. Now, obviously, with a lot of the people we're working with, more people tend to be more hypothyroid than hyper. And so when you have hypothyroidism, of course, then you're going to have a greater propensity to gain weight. Whereas hyperthyroid, that's when you are going to have that unexplained weight loss. You can also have weight loss resistance. So again, it doesn't matter how tight your nutrition is, how diligent you are with exercise. If you're struggling with weight, many times we have to take a look at the thyroid. And then fatigue, hot flashes, cold hands, cold feet, thinning hair, brain fog, dry skin, brittle nails, constipation, and low energy. So I'm just going to repeat that because I want you to start making a mental note of any of these symptoms you might be experiencing: unexplained weight gain, weight loss resistance, sleep problems, fatigue, hot flashes, cold hands, cold feet, cold sensitivity, thinning hair, brain fog, dry skin, brittle nails, constipation, or low energy. I'll tell you right now, and Paula will confirm this. I mean, Paula sees dozens and dozens of people that have multiple symptomologies that I just talked about, and she's obviously going to share some of the stories with you of some of the success stories she's had with people that were having thyroid issues. But Statistically, 27 million people in the United States suffer from thyroid condition. 50% of those with a thyroid condition are undiagnosed. And so that's something Paul is going to talk about in terms of conventional testing that's done and why many thyroid issues go undiagnosed because the testing is so inferior today. Again, up to 90% of women age 40 plus have subclinical hypothyroidism. So, and basically what that means is they're experiencing symptoms, but they still remain undiagnosed. And then 90% of American men and women may be affected by thyroid issues. 90%, that is an alarming number. And then 80% of thyroid conditions occur in women, with 80% of those cases being hypothyroidism and 80% of those being autoimmune in nature. So I am going to bring Paul in, and we're just going to talk about, Paul, what do you see, when you're dealing with the majority of our clients that have thyroid symptomologies? What are you seeing as kind of the biggest things that they're struggling with? And what are some of the stressors that you find when you are doing their assessment?
When I look at it, hello everybody. But when I look at the thyroid, I find that so many people come up with it for many, many different reasons, whether it's sleep issues, waking up in the middle of the night, can't getting back to sleep is a big one. And if you look at a lot of these symptoms that we have, whether it's thinning hair, constipation, low energy, hot flashes, fatigue, obviously weight loss, resistance, a lot of that is due. If I see that, it's definitely perimenopause, menopausal women seem to be the priority with all of that. But I also have men that have issues as well with their thyroid. It's fine. It's really interesting because like I have this guy and he has been to many, many different people trying to figure out what's going on with his digestive system. And the main thing that we worked on was his stress levels and his thyroid. So once we got him going with like iodine, and we had to just look at some stressors that were affecting his thyroid, now his digestive system is like great. So as long as we're supporting his thyroid, it's definitely better. When Rob was talking about like conventional medicine, if you go into the doctor and you're like, I really would like my thyroid tested, traditionally, they're going to just test your TSH. That's thyroid circulating hormone. That particular hormone is not even a thyroid hormone. So it's mind-boggling to me, like how bad our system is. So that's actually a pituitary hormone. So that's not even testing what your thyroid is doing. And then when it comes to blood work, even if they look a little deeper, it's just where the blood's at that time. It doesn't mean that you're getting cellular that particular hormone into the cell and usable. So it's really interesting. So if you do get blood work, you really want to look at more of a functional medicine thought pattern, which is more of the reverse T3, free T3, free T4. The reverse T3 is basically, am I in fight or flight? Is that what's going on? So is my thyroid hormones going into a stress response versus going into usable energy and being able to use by your cells? So I definitely think it's really important to make sure that you understand the thyroid hormones. And even if your levels look normal, like Rob said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're normal. It really means that, it's not going to, sometimes it won't show up in the blood work for 10 years, 10 plus years after having all of those symptoms. So there are many different things that you can do for that. You can, what I usually look at is like, okay, would this be a person that's actually going to need a medication, which would be like a T3? But there's 4 different thyroid hormones. There's T1, T2, T3, T4. T1 and T4 are inactive hormones, and T2 and T3 are active hormones. So we don't, right now in the testing, in blood testing, there is no T2 testing. They don't even test it. And T2 is very essential for being able to make sure that you're burning your brown body fat and making sure it can actually turn white fat into brown fat. And I can have maybe Rob elaborate on that a little bit more, but it's really, really important to understand that we want to be able to make sure that we are having those adequate hormones and imbalance. And there's a lot of natural things we can do to rebalance them and say, why is the thyroid not at an optimal level for T2 or T3? And so we really want to look at what Rob said, all the stressors. So there can be heavy metals affecting the thyroid. I see a lot of immune challenges affecting the thyroid.
Hey,
The
Paula, one second.
heart can affect the
Let's
thyroid.
just let's break those down one at a time. So, for instance, like with heavy metals,
Yeah.
really quick, I'll just share my personal story with my thyroid, having thyroid issues, particularly hypo. I tend to have low bowel transit time. So I tend to have sluggish bowels. And so, in terms of the symptoms I experience with my thyroid, it's that is probably my primary driver. But the one thing is, I was doing a food sensitivity test, and took my blood, and I was having a difficult time having the blood ball up on my finger and getting it on the slide when I was doing my microscopy work, and then when I was doing food sensitivity. And so generally that's indicative of being low in iron. And I was like, why in the world am I low in iron? Because I was eating, I was I was going a little bit more carnivore during this period, and I'm like, I'm getting plenty of iron. Well, when I dug into it a little bit deeper, I realized that when you have heavy metal toxicity, then you're not going to absorb your iron. And what had happened is I had some mouth pathology. I had a filling, a mercury filling that was leaking. And that mercury filling was creating mercury toxicity. And so I ended up getting the mercury removed. And then I had this wonderful practitioner named Paula put me on a great detox protocol just to remove that mercury from my body. And it was amazing how quickly I saw results with that. But that can be really, really stubborn when you're dealing with mercury. And we see all the time people have a tremendous amount of mouth pathology issues from dental crowns, mercury fillings, particularly our clients that are baby boomers, because a lot of those people had dental work, and there were things like mercury and tin, and a number of composites that Paula will actually test them for, that they come up positively, that is negatively affecting them. And then one other point I want to make is, many times when people talk about, is this normal? We have to differentiate the word normal from optimal, because what we're seeing today, with so many people having so many issues with their health, a lot of these parameters are normal, but they are far from optimal. Would you agree, Paula?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just huge. I mean, do you want to be normal, or would you rather be a rock star? Would you rather like be at the highest level and live the highest life, or would you rather be normal? So really, you want to be what Rob says, optimal for you. So for your levels, it's really kind of really interesting when you kind of look at how a lot of practitioners only treat the blood test or the test versus actually treating how the person is feeling. So it's really important to understand, how is this person feeling overall, and making sure that we're looking at every parameter of that, like what could be affecting it. With the thyroid, you can also have different hormones and different imbalances affecting that too, like your adrenals or your pituitary hormones. So we like to kind of look at all of that and say, like, what's affecting what? Literally, low progesterone can affect your thyroid, but the thyroid tends to be the driver of most of your hormones. So really important. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that your entire blood system of your body goes through your thyroid every 90 seconds. That is mind-boggling to me. So just think, your whole blood is circulating through that thyroid every 90 seconds. So just understand how important it is to make sure you have optimal thyroid function. Yeah. Did you want to talk about like maybe goiters or things like that?
Well, the one thing I really want to stress, because so many people are dealing with thyroid issues, and we have to take a look at from a cellular level. So, for instance, if you go into the doctor, like Paula said, they're going to take like a blood test, and blood is homeostatic. So, blood's going to try and regulate no matter how dysfunctional you are. And what they're really not doing is identifying at that real. So when you're getting a blood test done, that's that imprint in that moment of time. But what it doesn't address is at the cellular level. And when you take a look at the cellular level, there's really two components to having a healthy cell, and that's giving it the right raw materials it needs to function optimally, and then giving less of what it doesn't need, i.e., toxins. So it's important that you understand sometimes you need nourishment or you need the raw materials at the cellular level. And then sometimes the cell has become too toxic, and we have to identify what is creating this toxic environment at the cellular level. Because if we are comprised of trillions and trillions of cells, if all of your cells are healthy, it's virtually impossible to be sick. So we have to take a look at health from a cellular standpoint. Now, when the cell is not healthy, the cellular membrane is like the gateway to the cell. What happens is when the cell becomes too toxic, it loses its electrical voltage and the cellular membrane collapses. When the cellular membrane collapses, you cannot have a good exchange of nutrition coming into the cell and waste product exiting the cell. So the other thing, Paul, I really want to talk about, because we have so many clients that are dealing with this right now, is we are seeing an alarming rate of environmental toxins.
Hmm.
It's, you know, it's pesticides, it's glyphosates, it's your favorite PFAS, dioxins, heavy metals, plastics, endocrine disruptors. But I want you to talk about glyphosates and pesticides, because we see so many people coming up with that today.
Yeah, glyphosate is really insidious to really affecting the thyroid. So people don't know what glyphosate is. It's Roundup. So people that use Roundup, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I use it on my lawn." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, no, no. There's natural weed killers you can use." You just have to kind of look into some of that. I think my mom used like 30% vinegar and got rid of the worst kind of weeds. So there's always different ways that you can not expose yourself to toxic chemicals and pesticides. There's also a lot of salads, a lot of fruits and vegetables would have pesticides. That's why you're kind of looking at more organic. We want to really look at what kind of load do we have as far as the toxicity that we're putting in our body. But I definitely think that it's important to kind of look at everything. When I was, gosh, it was even this weekend, I had put on like my makeup. I had taken a shower on Saturday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am sweating. I had sweat like pouring down me. It was the craziest thing. And so then Rob checked me, and it was like my thyroid was disrupted because of the sunless tanner I was using. I'm like, oh my gosh. So,
Yeah.
you don't think of those things. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, why am I sweating? Like I had just sweat going. Oh, I just felt gross. So after I'd just taken a shower. So it's like, and you know what? And then the next day, I obviously took a shower, didn't use any of the sunless stuff or anything, but did not have that reaction. It was so extreme. So it's so important. And you don't really realize that there can be one toxic chemical in one of the products you're using that could be affecting you negatively. You got to pay attention though. Like, how am I feeling? Okay, I take a shower, I put my makeup on, now I don't feel good, but I felt fine before. So what is it that's not or what's affecting me negatively?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got a number of people that either play golf or live on golf courses.
Yes.
And of course, they're spraying all the time. And so I think it's important for people to understand that if your detoxification pathways are functioning optimally, then you can oftentimes, our body's designed to get rid of these toxins. But if any of your detoxification pathways are compromised, then that stresses another detoxification pathway. And then the next thing you know, you've got a couple that are compromised. and you can no longer handle that toxic burden. And so, again, we have to look at the body as a system. Sometimes we can't just isolate the thyroid. There's something called Pfluger's laws. And when you take a look at functional neurology, you understand that there's something called reflex arcs. And reflex arcs is your gut can actually affect your thyroid. So that's called a visceral reflex. Your musculature. So I could have a trigger point or tight muscle in my chest muscle, and that can actually reflex into my thyroid. So that's called a visceral reflex. And so this is a great saying, and I think this actually came from an astronomer. And he said, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to any of us. And when you start looking at holistic health and you start to realize the interrelated components and how we have to evaluate your body as a system, because there are so many variables that go into optimizing your health. And that's where it gets very complex. And I think this is the one thing Paul and I struggle with the most is we hear people all the time, well, my friend is taking this supplement or they're on this nutritional plan. Do you think that would be great for me? Or do you think they should take this? And Paula's favorite response is, I don't know. If I'm not assessing them, then I'm guessing. And if you think about this, because, biochemically we're different, epigenetically we have differences, we have different sleep schedules, we have different emotional stresses. These are all things that actually allow the gene to express. And so the way, and Paul and I live in the same house, but we sometimes will deal with stress differently. We'll eat differently sometimes. We could, be around some other toxin, whether it was in the air. We live next to a sod farm. We go for a walk. Sometimes we'll come back and it's like, why do I feel so horrible? Paula will test me or I'll test her, coming up with glyphosates or air pollution, water pollution.
Mhm.
It's, the one thing we always tell people is the work is never done. I mean, if you're trying to optimize your health, like you're trying to do whatever you can to feel your very best. And when you feel really crappy, then you're just after trying to get out of that hole. But many times what you have to take a look at is getting away from just isolating one organ or gland or system. And then really, to get to the root cause, we have to evaluate, is it a deficiency or is it a toxicity? And Paula, I think, PFASs are something that a lot of people don't know about. You've done a lot of research on that. Can you discuss that for a second here?
Yeah, PFAS is polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's vegetable oils. So these are, and probably if you're in listening to anything on the health front, I mean, pretty much everyone's talking about that this is the number one thing to address in your diet and to try to eliminate ASAP. So and I find constantly that people, when I'm testing them for their thyroid, that there's something around fat that we have to address. So it's whether their thyroid needs a certain fat or they need to stay away or both. But the thyroid tends to really like saturated fat, like coconut oil and butter. Butter is the number one, I think, fat that I find that people like. And I say, just get like the good pastured grass-fed butter. But when you look at the PFAS, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, it is in so many products and it takes months for it to get out of your system. And it causes a cellular inflammation that is, cellular inflammation is the worst you can possibly get. So when everything is designed around your cells. So if your cells aren't happy, your body is not going to function well. So when you look at that, you want to look at sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, and try to stay away from those oils, all of those vegetable oils. If you go to the grocery store and you're going into the aisle with all the chips, if you look at all the chips, you're really looking at a very small amount that you can get that do not have those. So I would encourage you to look for the ones that have olive oil, coconut oil, and yeah, olive oil and coconut oil, and avocado oil. Those are the three main ones that you're looking for if you're in the aisle and you want to go buy some packaged foods. We always look for those because those do not contain those PFAS. So it's really important. And also remember that we vote with our dollars. That means if we're buying products that don't have the PFAS in them, that means that they're going to stop making them, and we will get more products that are healthier, that have more of those fats in them that are actually healthy for us. So the PFAS is a really important thing. If there's one thing you can do, look at your packaged or boxed foods and try to eliminate all of that. Even if you go to a health food store, a lot of their products are made with these. So it's like crazy, but hopefully that's going to start shifting and changing, but you can change it for your family and for your own health. So definitely an easy thing to do. There are some good products and chips, and I love that one brand with that Himalayan sea salt. And what is that brand's name? It's a popcorn brand. Anyways, it's made with coconut oil. That one's really good. So just know that there are products out there that are good and they're tasty, but they're a small amount right now. So definitely encourage you to get out there for your family and get those good products so that we can start getting more and more of those on the market and less of those polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah, I remember when I interviewed Dr. Hal Huggins, who was really one of the pioneers of biological dentistry and maybe the pioneer. But he actually said within 4 minutes of placing a mercury amalgam filling, it could affect a person's thyroid. 4 minutes.
Wow.
And so, and there's so many people, again, that still have mercury in their mouth. But another place that people don't realize that something that contains mercury is vaccines, like the flu vaccine has mercury. And so people take the flu vaccine, and many times, literally within minutes, their thyroid can have dysfunction. It can weaken it pretty significantly. So mercury is very, very stressful and very toxic to the thyroid. Another thing too is plastics. People today are drinking more and more water, and I think today more than ever, people are, focusing more on carrying around like a stainless steel, unfortunately, a lot of times people have to go to a plastic bottle of water. The big thing is, if you do buy water in plastic, do not have it in your car for too long in the hot sun, because the xenoestrogens can actually build up in the water, these estrogen mimickers. So plastics can be very disruptive to the thyroid as well. And so anytime you can use like a stainless steel or a glass bottle with your water, that's something obviously we always want to encourage. But again, getting back to like Paula with her sunless tanner, we've had a number of females that have came up with estrogen disruptors or endocrine disruptors from makeups. And makeup, it can be very, very toxic. So I don't know if you can explain some of that, Paula, as far as what you've seen and if you've got any examples there, but I know that you've spoke about that many times with clients.
Yeah, there's the one thing about that is there's not really any regulations on makeup. So they can put anything they want into makeup. And makeup, you got to understand that your skin is one of the main detoxification pathways of your body. So if you're putting it on your skin, you basically go, I want to take this and I want to shove it into my bloodstream. It's going to go into the bloodstream because it goes through the skin, really important. So like Rob said, you can follow like EWG to try to get as clean products as possible. So Environmental Working Group, you can download that app. I think there's another Healthy Living one too, but There are definitely apps out there that you can just scan it, products to see where they are. But the EWG, if you're like, okay, I want to go in and I want to, type in, I'm looking for a sun. This is what we did. I went in and said, okay, sunless tanners. Okay, let me see where they're rated. And then I had him test me for which one that my body wants. So then I ordered that one because I like my sunless tanner. I don't like looking super white. So, so you can definitely find these things. So any product that you want. In this day and age, we so like if you look at even Sephora has clean beauty product lines. So if you go in there, you can look for like Tarte or gosh, I'm trying to think of all the different ones, but there's quite a few actually clean beauty lines in this day and age. So just go in and try to get the best of the products that you can. Probably one of the hugest things is everybody always touts sunscreen. So there's a lot of makeup with sunscreen in it. Just try to make sure if you're doing that you're trying to get the zinc oxide, and try not to get the titanium dioxide. If you're really getting radical, I don't use titanium dioxide because I see toxicity from titanium dioxide so much. And I really think it's a number one place we're getting it is our personal care product, i.e. your makeup. So really important to look at that. But so there are options out there. Look at, you can even look online, clean beauty lines. And then there's always different, there's a lot of influencers out there that do reviews, and I'll watch them to see like which one, and then I'll go to the store and I'll try some and see what I think, and then buy one and check it out and see. But I definitely have every single product I use is a clean beauty line. And I like all the products that I use. So there's definitely good options out there. So just start with one thing at a time. You need to buy a new mascara, get a clean beauty. You need a lipstick, buy a new one and buy the clean beauty line. So just slowly start to increase your natural products as much as possible to help your thyroid not be bombarded from all those chemicals.
Yeah, another thing too is today we see a lot of women that have sluggish thyroids, that a scar on their body is actually creating electrical disruption. So if you think of a scar on your body as an inappropriately placed battery in your body, remember the body works best on something called the MENS cycle, and it stands for minimal electrical neuromuscular stimulation. So it can disrupt the autonomic nervous system. But another thing, if you think of like a cesarean going all the way across, our hysterectomy scar going all the way across that major meridian, that can affect your thyroid, your parathyroid, your pituitary, anything on this meridian, that scar can affect. And so that's one of the things we have to take a look at is, does a person have a scar on that major meridian, an episiotomy, a cesarean, hysterectomy scar, or anything in this region? And Paula, why don't you talk a little bit about some of your favorite success stories in terms of addressing scars and
Oh
how
my God.
scars have.
Yeah, I mean, scars, they come up super often. It's kind of
Yes, I do.
interesting when you look at like active scars. So, like Rob said, with an active scar is basically a scar on the body. So whether it was an incision or from an accident or whatever it is, but causing that, what it basically is, that energy is just, instead of it just flowing nicely through that area, it's literally like doing all sorts. It's just kind of all over the place. So it's erratic energy. And so there's so many different things that, especially belly buttons and C-sections, I find those to really be affecting the thyroid a lot. Because when Rob talks about the meridian, a meridian is a energy pathway through the body that it's a Chinese medicine. So it comes from the Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old, and how each pathway is actually disrupt or affect different things in the body. So on that same line, so like you said, if you have your I find that a lot. I find the belly button, which I find is really interesting. So the belly button is the first scar that we ever get, and nobody ever thinks about it, but it is on that direct path line to our thyroid. And I think it's really important to understand that there's also the emotional capacity of these scars. So these scars are um, it's kind of like an injury. It's an injury to your body. And so when there's a weakened point in your body, you tend to hold on to emotional stuff there. It's really interesting. So I find a lot of emotions are trapped in scars. So we try to work on it and figure out which emotions that are trapped in that area to release those so that that scar can actually flow freely. And then we also use oils a lot of times to rub on the scar and take internally to really help with that energy flow through the scar and uplifting that meridian and activating that thyroid again. So it's really scars it's fascinating, but you can definitely, if somebody's really struggling and you can't seem to figure them out, it's usually a scar. You just go right to the scar, and then you clear scars, and all of a sudden it's all of a sudden their pains are going away, their hip pains are going away. They're starting to lose weight, they have more energy, they feel better. So it's definitely a huge problem is scars. That's what we like to
Yeah.
test.
Yeah. And that is one thing, of course, they're not going to assess that in conventional medicine. They're looking at very specific parameters for the blood. And
Yeah.
this is why so many people have undiagnosed thyroid dysfunction. And it's so frustrating because you go to the doctor and you've got this laundry list of symptomologies, and they're like, well, we ran all these tests and everything came back normal.
Yeah.
So that's when you have to take a look at all these symptoms of a dysfunctional thyroid. And then it's like, okay, what is causing it? Is it a deficiency or is it a toxicity? And remember, Paul, just share with everybody all the specific stressors that we would take a look at when we're evaluating just the thyroid. Um,
Definitely what I look at, nutrient deficiencies is number one. So what are they deficient in that their thyroid is not optimally functioning? So the number one thing is definitely iodine. So we are definitely not getting enough iodine rich foods in our diet, which are generally the seafoods, the shrimps and a lot of seafood. And we don't get a lot of those, especially in the Midwest. So iodine's the number one.
seaweed. I
Oh
like
yeah, oh
seaweed.
yeah, sorry, seaweed. I don't know a lot of people that eat seaweed, but some people love it. Like my
Love it.
husband loves his seaweed. So loves to just eat the seaweed snacks. Oh my gosh, I'm like, yuck.
Great.
Tastes like it
Well,
smells like the ocean. But yeah, so iodine's my number one thing. So, and then selenium is another big one that you want to make sure you're getting in your diet. So, sunflower seed nut butter, as well as Brazil nuts are another place that you can get your adequate amounts of selenium. I like to get those through food if at all possible. And so nutrient deficiencies and then toxicities. So toxicities would be like chemicals, like we talked about, heavy metals, like we talked about, and immune challenges. So immune challenges, that would be like parasites, fungus, viruses, and bacteria. Those are the main ones, and then scars that are affecting the thyroid that I look for.
yeah, and like Paula was saying, we are finding more and more kind of emotional drivers in a lot of these symptoms people are experiencing. And many times things are layered. And so you focus on the first layer, and then you might have to go down two or three different layers to actually uncover the root cause. And that's where, sometimes, you have to stay on the journey. And it can be very frustrating. I mean, Paul and I are constantly testing each other. And, the reality is we all have our challenges and struggles sometimes when we're going through we're looking to sidestep all the landmines we have today. I mean, our food quality is so poor, air quality, water quality. I mean, there are so many more stressors that we are dealing with today than our parents or grandparents had to deal with. And so, consequently, your strategies had better change because your body's under more stress. And if you're not taking a holistic approach and you're isolating or compartmentalizing, uh, you're just always going to struggle. And the one thing is, when you're dealing with a system based approach or a holistic approach, sometimes you have to do a lot more digging because to get to the root cause, it can be very, very complex. Paula, let's talk a little bit about the immune challenges that might affect, you were talking about parasites, whether it's a bacteria, virus. Uh, we're seeing a lot of people also with viral components that are affecting the thyroid.
Yeah, that's for sure. And there can be different kinds of viruses that can affect the thyroid. The kind of insidious ones are those old school ones, like the retro type viruses, like your Epstein-Barr virus, your herpes virus. So if you've ever had a cold sore, canker sore, that tends to be just wearing on that thyroid and then can drain your energy and not have optimal thyroid function. But also COVID. So COVID seems to be another issue with, and pretty much almost everybody's had COVID at one point, that can really affect the thyroid as well. But yeah, all the immune challenges affect the thyroid. So any one of them, I mainly see probably for the thyroid would be more viral.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we really try and tell people that if you want to keep health really, really simple, it boils down to flow, right? So you have to have flow. If you have a blockage of any kind in the body, bad things happen. So in conventional medicine, it's a blockage of blood flow, nerve flow, lymph flow. In the world of holistic health, you might hear things life force, chi, prana. In the end, it's all energy because we're comprised of nothing but energy. So it boils down to flow and it boils down to balance. And nobody will ever refute that. If your body's out of balance, whether you're talking, your biochemistry or you're talking about your muscles, anytime your body's out of balance, bad things are going to happen. That's generally when symptomologies are going to manifest because the body's designed to work in homeostasis. And when we take a look at our thyroid, it's our body gets knocked out of homeostasis. So there's something there, again, that's stressing out the body. And then sometimes there's another system or another organ that's stressed out that is creating that reflex arc to the thyroid. So we even have to take a look at gut health and what you're finding today. And Paula will tell you based on the conversation she has with clients, more and more clients are understanding the importance of the gut microbiome and how important that is and how that can actually affect not only your brain, anxiety and depression, but it can also affect your thyroid, which
Yeah.
controls a number of things. So is there anything you want to add in terms of that, Paula?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think the gut microbiome effects. So there's the gut brain axis, there's a liver brain axis, there's it literally is, it, I mean, it's never ending when it comes to the gut, but the gut is always important to keep that in balance with good bacteria to keep your thyroid healthy as well. Really important.
Yeah, in terms of what you recommend for someone that might be concerned about having a thyroid issue, is there any kind of go-to that you encourage people to look into, or is it I've got to do an assessment and of course I know the answer, but go ahead.
Yes, we always want to assess it and say what's going on with this thyroid, what's affecting it. Is there other hormone imbalances affecting it? Is there an immune challenge? Is there a heavy metal? Like, is there gut microbiome issues? Yes, it could go on and on. But I would definitely say if you're looking at the priorities, I would say affecting the thyroid that I like to go to is certain probiotics. I like iodine, and I like essential T, or our essential T2, which is thyroid 2. It's the one of the thyroid hormones. So T2 is the only thyroid hormone that's not regulated and not a medication. So that's one of those that we carry because I really like to keep that. If somebody tests that they're low in T2, that can be a dramatic, and it's a game changer if you put that in their life. Absolute game changer. They feel just slowly, they'll start feeling better and better and better. It just starts helping increase their basal metabolic rate, helps them burn more body fat, helps them feel better, more energy, and kind of helps them get their life back again. So those three things are probably the main ones I always look for.
Yeah, and then
And
you know
zinc,
one of the
sorry, zinc. Zinc is another one.
think is very important,
In order for
and so
people
many
to,
people.
in order for people's body to produce T3, I'm finding that they need zinc. So that's another active thyroid, the active hormone. So I really like zinc for that.
Yeah, are you finding a difference between men and women in terms of what the minerals that they need to optimize? Where guys are needing more zinc and women
Yes,
it's more iodine, or are you seeing?
that's exactly it. I'm seeing more guys needing zinc and women needing more iodine.
Yeah, yeah, and for me it's generally always zinc. Um, But the one thing too is when it comes to um, people in weight loss, and there's so many people today, of course, that are always looking to lose maybe a couple of extra pounds. But where a person stores their body fat is receptor mediated. So what that means is where you store your body fat really tells the story of the functionality of specific organs or glands. And so when someone has more body fat around their midsection, we're looking at probably excess cortisol, and then blood sugar regulation issues. When someone has more body fat on their hips and thighs, we're looking at estrogen dominance, more body fat on the back of their arm. We're looking at blood sugar regulation, low DHEA. But with a thyroid body, generally, someone who has a thyroid body is going to store their body fat relatively proportionate. Okay. So that's a pretty good indication if you have a little bit more of a thyroid issue. But again, we've already talked about all the symptoms that correlate with a dysfunctional thyroid. But, if it's interesting because a lot of times when Paul and I are meeting a client for the first time, we're already starting the assessment from the minute they walk in the door. Like I'm looking at how a person's shifting their body weight, how they're standing, their posture, their breathing. I'm already doing the assessment. And so when we take a look at where a person is storing their body fat, it already gives us an indication of probably what we have to take a look at. So for instance, if someone has more belly fat, again, we're going to probably look at, stress mitigation or blood sugar regulation. Again, hips and thighs, we're probably going to look at the health of someone's liver. So again, their body is always giving us signs and symptoms, but unfortunately, what a lot of people are doing is the signs and symptoms are like the check engine light coming on, and people are just putting the duct tape over it. They're doing whatever they can to get rid of that symptom. But the symptom, remember, is always the gift. And we have to dig into that symptom to get to the root cause. So just remember that the symptom, as much as it stings sometimes, the symptom is the gift. It's trying to give us the message. It's our body's way of communicating that there's an imbalance present. And it's saying, please address me. Here's your symptom, right? And so that's what we have to do, is we have to get to the root cause. And in terms of your thyroid, remember there's so many variables that go into that, and that's why you have to have an accurate assessment. Years ago, Paula and I, one of the things we did was hair tissue mineral analysis, where we would actually take a sample of someone's hair, and then we would get mineral data, and we'd be able to see if someone had heavy metals and what their mineral ratios were. But nothing has been more accurate and more powerful than the morphogenic field technique, because we are testing the energy field. And so I think what's so important for people to understand is, because there are multiple variables, and here's the thing, this is the one thing that stinks, is our variables are constantly changing. Why? Because our stressors are changing. Your environment is changing. Sometimes you're in a more toxic environment. Sometimes you're in a setting where you can't eat as good. Sometimes you have more emotional stress. So if your body's unbalanced at all and it gets knocked out of homeostasis, that's what a stressor is. A stressor is anything that knocks the body out of balance or out of homeostasis. So one stressor in and by itself, the body's like, okay, I can deal with this. But now all of a sudden we get 2 or 3 stressors, and the next thing you know, our body can't handle that. And that's why there's so much value in, of course, the morphogenic field testing, because now we can really get to, the root cause. And then part of this is, our job is to help you get to the root cause, but then your job is, of course, implementing the strategies. And, we're so blessed to work with the clients that we do, because our clients are very committed to not feeling normal, but feeling optimal.
Yes.
And of course, that takes work. And so sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves, and other times you have to know, what's my strategy? What's my protocol? What do I have to do? So in closing, Paula, do you have anything you want to add in terms of what you might recommend if someone might think they have a thyroid issue?
Definitely get in and let us check it. I mean, that's the most important thing, is just to see like all the different parameters, like what should you be eating? Because I think that's another really important one too, is like that, are they eating foods that are actually negatively affecting it? Wheat gluten is like scientifically studied to show to suppress the thyroid. So wheat is like the number one thing to eliminate. Wheat and dairy probably are the 2 big ones, but sometimes there's other foods, but those seem to be the main ones. And then the PFAS, the polyunsaturated fatty acids. But besides that, start changing your lifestyle. But if you want to get tested, then we can go deeper into it. I would definitely recommend that too. If you're like, okay, I've already done all these other things. Now I would just want to know some deeper stuff. And then we can get into the emotional side of it, or whatever else is just holding there that needs to be released or rebalanced. And so that you can feel your best.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, people. Hopefully you gained a nugget or two of information here, and we were able to bring some value to you tonight. We want to thank you all for sharing the time with us tonight, and for being such great clients. Of course, our clients are like family to us. We are so committed to doing whatever we can to help you optimize your health. Remember, we don't want you to be normal. We want you to be optimal. Paul and I are sharing the journey with you. The work is never done. We're constantly trying to be our very best, and we want the very best for you guys. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity to share the journey with you. And until next month, we love and appreciate all of you guys, and do what you can to do your work, to be your very best. And we'll see you next month.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.